If you're a runner, you've probably heard of the 10% rule, which essentially says that you shouldn't change your training volume more than 10% in a given week, or else you increase the risk of injury. But is that actually true? A systematic review by Damsted, published in the International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy, looked at whether there was an association between a sudden increase in training load and suffering a running-related injury. And what they found was that there was very little evidence to support this association, that a sudden increase in training load would increase the risk of suffering an injury among runners. The systematic review included 4 different studies. There were 2 prospective studies, 1 cross-sectional study, and then the other was a randomized controlled trial. The 2 prospective studies and the cross-sectional study found that increasing the training load by more than 30% each week resulted in a higher likelihood of suffering a running injury. However, the randomized controlled trial, which compared 2 groups, one group of increasing the training load by 10% each week to another group which increased their training load by 24% each week, there was no statistical significance between the 2 groups of suffering an injury, which is why the systematic review found that there was no threshold, whether that was 10%, 20%, or 30% changes in training volume, that would increase your risk of suffering a running-related injury. It's also important to look at how training load is defined in these studies, because training load encompasses a bunch of different things. So we could be looking at the distance that we're running, the duration, the frequency, the intensity, the amount of steps taken during the run. None of these studies really break up where this 10, 20, 30% change in training load comes from. And so we don't know whether it's the amount of steps that are taken that's the biggest factor in training load, or if it's the amount of running that you're doing, or the frequency that you're doing. We just don't know which one of those factors is most important. And so when we're creating a program to help minimize the risk of suffering a running-related injury, we should still gradually increase the loads that we're placing on the body. However, the adaptability of the body, there's not a specific percentage is what this systematic review is saying, whether that's 10% change, 20% change, or 30% change per week. Instead, we have to look at some of the other factors as well, such as distance, frequency, intensity, training history. So for example, if we're looking specifically at runners, what's their training history? Have they been doing some strength training? Or have they been running over the last 4 weeks? So we can look at that acute chronic workload ratio, which is Tim Gabbet's work, to help kind of better estimate how much load their body can tolerate. Thank you for watching this episode on training loads and running injuries. I hope that you found this information useful. If you're a runner, go ahead and let me know in the comments below what you're currently training for. If you want to see more of my content, go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you want to be notified of future videos, hit that bell. And then as always, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up.